Hello. Today I wanted to show you my red-eye red-tail pufferfish. I have 3 of them in this tank. This is a 32-gallon Fluval Flex. I have 2 females and a male. You can see on the right the 2 females. The male is swimming towards center now. Males have red tail fins and a red dorsal fin. Females have much more cryptic markings. They don't have any striping, it's more speckling. Of course, it's hard to see because they want to be up front, right where you are. They are very social. They don't want to hang around the middle of the tank under the light. And while this might look like glass surfing, like you see in figure 8s and green spots and some other puffers, this is just because I'm in the room. They do explore a lot more when I'm not here. They think they're going to be fed whenever you walk past the tank. I had a figure 8 before this in this tank, very different configuration, being brackish water. These guys are full freshwater. The figure 8 glass surfed constantly. It didn't matter what was in there to try to keep him entertained, he just didn't care. So, red-eye puffers, sometimes you'll see them just referred to as red tail or red fin puffers. Their Latin name is Carinotetraodon irrubesco. So these guys are about probably an inch right now. They max out around 1.5 inches to maybe 2 inches. They were about 3/4 of an inch 3 months ago when I finally got a hold of them. They are pretty hard to find right now in the hobby. I had never seen them in person, and though several websites listed them for sale, they were never in stock. So one of those games where you're signing up for restock notifications, hoping that the website isn't defunct and that somebody actually answers you. And somebody did. Couldn't tell you which site it was at this point, but if somebody really cares, I suppose I can look it up. So being full freshwater, I wanted to have a lot of plants in this tank. One of the big problems I had with the brackish system was the salinity that my figure 8 is recommended to be kept at did not really allow for a lot of plant growth. You'll see a lot of things about, oh, you can grow Java fern and several other things in brackish water. Well, they don't really grow there, they more survive there, and they do not thrive. And over time they do melt, they get covered in algae. Puffers of all varieties are very messy feeders. They love to crunch through meaty food, snails, shrimp, things like that. So it's very messy. You have a high phosphate load in the water, probably also very high nitrates. As a result, if you can't grow plants to help eat some of that up, you're going to end up with a huge algae problem. And I was cleaning that tank twice a week to try to keep up on it, and it looked terrible. This, obviously, going full freshwater was much easier in regard to nutrient control through plants. Of course, my local fish shop wanted to push the dwarf Indian pea puffers on me, which everybody has, and to me they're fine. They're a puffer fish. They're interesting. If that's what you like, cool. I just feel like everybody had them, and I don't really think their markings are that attractive. Some of the other puffers that are really cool, that are full freshwater, are like the Poa genus. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Those are your potato puffers and dragon puffers, and they like to wallow in muddy, soft, silty sand beds, which is not particularly conducive to a nice, clean, planted aquarium. So I didn't really want to do that. I'm sure there are ways to do it, and people have done it, and it looks great. I just wasn't really interested in that. Amazonian puffers, those are beautiful. They look very similar to your figure 8s. The only thing is I've read multiple articles about how their teeth grow faster than most other puffers, and even if you are feeding them 100% snails, you may end up having to trim their teeth, which is something I did not want to have to do in time. One of the benefits to the Amazonian puffers, though, is they love to be in groups, so you can keep a school of them, which you can see here. These guys have no problem being with one another, whereas figure 8s and green spots need a lot of room if you're going to keep multiple or at least that's what everybody tells you. So having more than one fish in a 32-gallon tank was desirable. The other thing is, as you can see, we have tank mates that are not getting eaten. If you're wondering what those are sparkling gouramis. There are actually 4 of them, but you typically never see more than 2 or 3 at a time. They are a little more cryptic than their pufferfish friends. Very interesting fish in their own right, and even just having several more of those in a tank like this would be pretty cool. As far as the way that I have this planted, if you've ever seen the channel MD Fish Tanks, he has a method where he takes peat or other granulated organic substrate and puts it into zipper bags. They're like a mesh zipper bag, and he puts those across the bottom. Sometimes he adds some ground up fertilizer. He adds whatever recycled gravelly substrate he has on hand on top of it. In this case, it was the Fluval stratum that was in this tank when I had the figure 8. And then he caps that all off with whatever kind of fine sand, just to lock all the nutrients in underneath. In this case, I am using black diamond blasting sand. I read a lot about this stuff because it seems to be a little controversial. A lot of people are very concerned about the quality, whether or not it will leach anything into the water. It is fully inert. If you look at it up close, it actually does look like glass. Not sharp. It is rough, but I would not say that it's sharp. One thing about it is, and I have read this, you do have to rinse it a lot before you use it, as there is machine oil in it from the processing, wherever it is they make this stuff. So for about 2 weeks, every day I would fill up and empty the bucket until there was no more surface oil on top of that water, and then I did it a few more times just to be certain. And even after I put it in the tank, there was no film on top. I did this long before I put any animals in here. And then just planting carefully with tweezers down into the substrate so that the roots can grow into those mesh zipper bags, so that they have a nutrient source, because the sand has very little cation exchange capacity. If you don't know what that means, it means that it cannot hold on to any kind of fertilizer or organically derived nutrients. The Fluval stratum isn't a whole lot better, although plants can grow in just that, and they would do better than in pure sand. But by going from very rich, very nutritious, peaty substrate to somewhat nutritious Fluval stratum to completely inert sand, you're trapping all the nutrients down below, so that hopefully, as long as there's no major disruption, you don't end up with some kind of a phosphate spike that causes a lot of algae. Now, as you've noticed, blowing off of the plants in the back, there is some algae, despite how much the plants are soaking up, and I do fertilize them with a lot of the Seachem liquid additives. Algae still happens, and not a lot you can do about it other than try to clean up and, trim the plants back when they get covered in it. And it hasn't been too bad. It's actually been a lot more successful than the brackish system. Some of the furniture that I have in here for the fish, I do have a lot of Cereus stone, although it's so overgrown it is now hard to see. I love Cereus stone. It makes it look like little mountains in there. There's another kind of island outcropping here. So you can see up close this is a female. I'm trying not to shake the camera too much for you. The females definitely have the more cryptic markings. We'll see if later we can get a good shot of the male looking in from the end, so you can see the Cereus stone sticking up there. There's also a bit of driftwood, manzanita, I believe. You can see a little bit here, the sand layer, and then you can see it's just kind of dirtier looking underneath, and that's your Fluval stratum layer, and there are a few roots visible. All of those zipper bags are not close enough to the glass that you'd be able to see any of them, so I can't really demonstrate that. I have some Cryptocorine Wentii red. In the front is Pogostomon helferi, I don't remember what the stem plants are. I put probably 20 different types of stem plants in there. No joke, no exaggeration. And whatever this type of rotala is, I think it's a rotala, it took over. The kabomba did not make it. It was in this back corner. There was some bacopa you can still see in the back over there that's just kind of hanging on. This is the same as what's growing in the back. It just takes over. So I trim this back probably every 2 weeks. I throw away large amounts of it. The cryptocorynes are doing good. The pogostomen are doing pretty well. I tried a few different ground cover plants in here. You can see there is a tiger lotus, which I hate that name because it's not a lotus at all. It's an nymphaea. So that is a very small water lily. I had another one on the other side that comes and goes. I think you can kind of see the red down in there. Very pretty plant, not very dominant compared to some of the other things. There is Java fern in here somewhere, although it's been kind of suppressed. I find Java fern requires a lot of additives to really keep it happy. In my other tank, I will put in a lot of the Seachem Trace additive, and that seems to make a huge difference for moss and Java fern. And my moss down here was Java moss, and as you can see, it's all but melted away to nothing. Sometimes you have better luck with it than others, I found. But these guys will dash through all of this terrain and hide and play. And so here comes the male right now up toward the front. You can kind of see what I mean about the eyes as he was approaching. You get that flash of kind of pale blue. As far as feeding them, you are supposed to feed them meaty shelled foods, typically snails, and I do. There were, as you can see, a lot of Malaysian trumpet snails in here, and they have just created a snail graveyard. I am breeding some ram's horn and some bladder snails that I throw in from time to time. I find that if they're full-size snails, though, these guys aren't as interested. It seems to be more the babies that they get a better bite on, being they have such a small mouth, that they care about, but that's okay. If adults survive in here, they'll reproduce. In addition to that, I also feed them bug bites, and this is their goldfish formula, which you think, okay, well, these aren't goldfish. You probably shouldn't be feeding them that. The thing is, this is fairly hard food, and it's fairly large size. Some of the bigger pieces are about the size of a pencil lead, and that's about the right bite size for them, where they can actually take a couple of bites out of it. And it's just hard and crunchy enough, I think, that it kind of satisfies that need to wear down their teeth a little bit. And they eat it very quickly before it has any chance to saturate with water. They're pulling it in and consuming it. And the other guys like it too. I will also feed them jumbo mysis shrimp, which I can share with my reef tank. So everybody in there will also be happy with mysis shrimp. Obviously, rinsing them helps with the phosphate issue. There's a big debate on whether or not you should rinse frozen food. Some people say yes because it gets rid of all of the liquid junk. Some people say no because a lot of times those foods are fortified with minerals and stuff, and rinsing can pull that out. In the case of a reef tank, pretty much everything in there will start to consume all of the more liquid portions, so that's basically free coral food by not rinsing it. There's the male down there looking for snails. You see the pattern on his back is very, very distinct, very pretty, where the females just look like more camouflage. So, overall, I'm very happy with Carinotetraodon irrubesco, red-tail puffer, red-eye puffer, whatever you'd like to call them. I love puffers. They're fascinating animals. They're very intelligent, very inquisitive. One of the things that I love about them the most, if you watch pufferfish up close, most fish swim with their tail and steer with their fins. The tail is what propels them, and then the fins just guide them. Puffers are the exact opposite. The fins are constantly fluttering. Sometimes they're even hard to focus on. They flutter so much, like a little hummingbird. The tail, on the other hand, is the rudder. Very, very different. They remind me of like a little helicopter, sometimes buzzing around. They can ascend vertically without changing orientation to some degree, some species more than others. Depends on how fast they're moving too. These ones have not shown any aggression toward fish. I also had silvertip tetras in here for a while. There was no noticeable aggression, so I was happy with that. Eventually they got moved to the other tank. So that's about it for now. I think I might do another video on the actual Fluval Flex 32 itself and discuss some of the features, pluses, minuses, drawbacks, modifications, things like that. But for now, I think that's it. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Thank you.